My girlfriend took out loans in my name without telling me, so I paid them off, built my credit, and let her sink in her own lies. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've always been the kind of person who double-checks everything. Bills, bank statements, even receipts from a $5 sandwich run. It's not that I'm paranoid. I was raised by a single mom who clawed her way out of debt after my dad left us with nothing but an old couch and a credit score that looked like a joke. Watching her hustle, budget, and make sacrifices for years. That taught me early on that money isn't just about numbers, it's about survival. By the time I hit my mid-20s, I had zero debt, a credit score in the 800s, and a 5-year plan that involved buying a modest 2-bedroom house with a little backyard for weekend barbecues. No frills, just peace. That was my dream. Then came Lila. She was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Long auburn hair, sharp wit, always the loudest laugh in the room. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, and by the end of the night, she had hijacked my Spotify playlist and told me I had the soul of a sad jazz saxophonist. I had no idea what that meant, but I was hooked. We moved in together after a year. She was passionate, driven, always jumping between creative gigs, photography, content consulting, a startup idea she swore was one investor away from blowing up. I admired her ambition. But she was also impulsive. Uber Eats 5 nights a week. New outfits for one-off events. That kind of thing. We had a few arguments over finances. Nothing screaming or toxic, just quiet frustration. She'd say things like, "You act like every dollar is life or death," and I'd reply, "Because sometimes it is." But I never thought it was serious enough to question her intentions. I thought love was about trusting someone enough to help them grow. I didn't know I was trusting someone who'd already crossed a line I couldn't see. At first, the signs felt like quirks, not warnings. Lila would snatch the mail before I got home, usually with a grin and a "just bills, nothing fun." Sometimes she'd stash it in the junk drawer, unread. Other times it disappeared altogether. I chalked it up to her being scatterbrained. Her brain always spinning with 10 different projects, 2 of which she actually followed through on. Then there were the screens. If I walked into the room while she was on her laptop, she'd switch tabs too fast. Not like she was watching anything inappropriate, just fast. Once I saw a glimpse of a loan website before the browser closed. She laughed it off. "Just researching options for my photography gear," she said. "They make it so complicated." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. She knew how to flip the conversation. If I questioned anything, she'd tilt her head, eyes wide, and ask, "Don't you trust me?" Every time she did, I felt like a jerk. Like I was dragging old wounds, my mom's trauma, my childhood stress, into a relationship that was supposed to be different. Better. At one point, she asked to use my credit card just once to cover an emergency flight to see her sick aunt. I hesitated. She looked hurt. "You think I'd screw you over for a plane ticket?" So I caved. She paid it back a few weeks later. That one gesture bought her more grace than I realized. I even added her as an authorized user later, thinking it'd help her build credit. I didn't see it as risky. We were in this together. If we were building a future, her financial stability mattered too, right? But slowly, I stopped checking things. I trusted her with more and verified less. And in doing that, I handed her the keys to a house she was already setting on fire, one match at a time. It started with a letter I almost didn't open. A thick white envelope from a bank I'd never heard of, addressed to me. I remember holding it over the trash, ready to toss it with the usual junk. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the weight of the envelope. Too official to ignore. I opened it casually, standing in the kitchen, thinking it was a mistake. It wasn't. "Thank you for your recent loan application," it read. "Your balance is now $14,762.54. Your first payment is due next week." I blinked at it, then read it again. And again. My chest tightened. I sat down at the table without realizing I had. My hands were shaking. I hadn't applied for any loans. Ever. I logged into Credit Karma, heart pounding, and pulled up my credit report. My score had dropped almost 80 points. 2 new loans in my name. Hard inquiries from lenders I didn't recognize. I remember whispering to myself, no, 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 no. I called the bank, trying to stay calm, pretending to be a confused borrower. The rep confirmed everything. The loan was approved with my name, my social security number, my employer info. I felt like I'd swallowed ice. When Lila walked in from a Target run, I was still sitting there, pale and silent. "What's wrong?" she asked. I didn't speak. I just handed her the letter. She looked at it for a second. Too long. Then she started crying. Full-on, messy sobs. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "I just needed help. And you're so good with money, I thought I'd pay it back before you noticed." My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. I couldn't even yell. I just stared at the woman I thought I loved, realizing I had no idea who she really was. And worse, I had no idea how far this went. That night, I barely spoke. The silence between us felt radioactive, thick, buzzing, dangerous. Lila kept trying to explain, pacing the living room barefoot, hair disheveled, eyes red from crying. "I was desperate," she said over and over. "It's just temporary. I swear I'll fix it." Her words looped like static, and all I could hear beneath them was she used my name. I sat there staring at the carpet, at the small stain from the coffee she'd spilled last week, at anything that wasn't her face. Every fiber of me wanted to shout, to demand why, but I couldn't get the words out. It wasn't just the money. It was the violation. The trust I'd built so carefully had been gutted without warning. When she finally knelt in front of me, grabbing my hands, I felt nothing. "I did it for us," she whispered. "You're always stressing about saving, about planning. I thought if I could get ahead, if I could help us, I'd prove I'm not useless." Her voice cracked on that last word. I should have walked away right then. But instead I hesitated, because buried under the anger was guilt. The twisted, familiar kind. The same guilt I used to feel watching my mom struggle with bills while I was too young to help. It crept in and whispered, "Maybe this is your fault too." So I didn't scream. I didn't pack my things. I just said quietly, "You need to tell me everything." She promised she would. But the details came in fragments, evasive and incomplete. Loan amounts that didn't match my reports, missing documents and stories that changed every time I asked. By midnight, I was sitting alone in the dark, the glow of my laptop illuminating the truth I already feared. She wasn't just lying about a mistake. She was lying about the scale of it, and I knew deep down this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next few days were a blur of emotional landmines. One moment, Lila was sobbing, curled up in a blanket on the couch, saying she hated herself. The next, she was snapping at me for making her feel like a criminal. Every conversation spiraled. I couldn't tell if I was comforting her or interrogating her anymore. She stopped going to work. She said the stress was destroying her mental health, and maybe it was. But part of me wondered if she just didn't want to face the fallout. She'd float through the apartment like a ghost, silent, messy, sometimes staring out the window for hours. I wanted to believe this was rock bottom for her, that maybe she really had learned something. Then came the promise. "I'll take over the payments. I'll fix it." She swore she was getting freelance gigs again. She even showed me emails, PayPal invoices, bank deposits. But something didn't feel right. The timelines were vague. The numbers didn't match what the loan statements said. Still, I gave her space. I didn't press. I told myself I was giving her a chance to redeem herself. But really, I was scared. Scared of what I'd find if I dug too deep. Scared of blowing everything up. To make peace, she booked us a weekend away. Just a cheap cabin rental, off-grid. "We need a reset," she said. "Let's remember why we fell in love." And for a while, it worked. We cooked over a fire, played cards by candlelight, laughed like old versions of ourselves. I started to believe maybe we'd survive this. Maybe it was a terrible mistake, not a pattern, but that's what made the next betrayal even worse. Because just when I thought she was healing, I discovered she was still hiding things. And this time, it wasn't just in my name. It was in ours. It was a Tuesday when I got the call that broke the illusion. I was at work halfway through a spreadsheet when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer until I saw the area code matched our city. "Hi, this is Lisa from Westline Auto Financing," the woman said politely. "I'm just calling to verify some details about your vehicle loan application from a few months ago." I froze. "What loan application?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. There was a pause. "The one you co-signed for. For a 2019 Nissan Altima. It's registered to Lila Jameson and—" I didn't hear the rest. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I hung up and walked straight out of the office. Lila hadn't just used my information for her own loans. She had co-signed a car loan with my name. For her brother, who I knew for a fact had trashed his last vehicle and couldn't hold a job for more than 3 weeks. I got home and found her on the couch watching reality TV like nothing had happened. I didn't say a word. I just dropped my keys on the counter and opened my laptop. I pulled up my credit report again, and sure enough, there it was, a $22,000 loan, active, current, and completely unknown to me until that morning. When I finally confronted her, she didn't even deny it. I had to help him, she said. "You don't understand what it's like to watch your own brother drown." My voice cracked when I asked, "And what about watching me drown, Lila?" Did that not matter? She just stared at me like I was being unreasonable. That night, something shifted in me. The anger that had been simmering finally settled into something colder. I stopped asking questions. I started making plans. After that night, I stopped reacting. No more fights. No more guilt-laced heart-to-hearts. I became calm, calculated. The kind of calm you feel right before a storm, when the air goes still and heavy. I started waking up early. Not for her, not for work, but to research. I pulled every credit report I could. I called every lender she'd touched using my name. I cataloged everything. Loan amounts, dates, IP addresses, mailing addresses. I kept a folder on my desktop labeled tax stuff, in case she snooped. Inside it, I stored every piece of evidence. At night, I played the part. I made dinner. I rubbed her back when she said she was too anxious to sleep. I told her we'd get through this, that I still loved her. Every lie I told her was stitched together with the threads of the ones she fed me. Behind her back, I opened a new checking account. I rerouted my paycheck. I changed passwords. I even put a credit freeze on my identity with all 3 bureaus. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. A person who viewed love as leverage. She hadn't stopped. She'd just gotten better at hiding it. One day, I noticed she left her email open. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Dozens of messages with her brother, negotiating payments, car issues, and screenshots of my financial information. They even joked about how paranoid I was. That's when I knew. She didn't just betray me. She used me, like a credit line with emotions. And now, she was going to learn what it felt like to be slowly, silently cut off. I wasn't going to scream or break things or beg her to care. I was going to disappear. One payment, one password, one boundary at a time. It all came crashing down on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I got home from work, soaked to the bone, only to find a bright orange envelope taped to the front door. Notice to pay or vacate. My first instinct was confusion. I knew I'd paid rent. I set up auto pay months ago. But when I opened the envelope, my heart sank. 2 months behind. I rushed inside, kicked off my wet shoes, and logged into the landlord portal. Auto pay was canceled. Payment history, empty. I called our property manager, trying to keep my voice steady. She called last month to say there were banking issues, he told me. Said you two were working it out. I gave it some time out of respect, but legally, I can't wait much longer. I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of our bed, her side unmade, makeup stains on the pillow, an empty Amazon box tossed in the corner, and just stared at nothing. All that quiet planning, all that control I thought I'd reclaimed, it hadn't been enough. She was still finding ways to sink us both. I walked into the living room. She was curled up watching TikToks, laughing at some dumb dance challenge. "Did you know we're 2 months behind on rent?" I asked, my voice dead flat. She blinked. "What? No way. I thought it was on autopay." "You canceled it." "No, I didn't. Maybe the system glitched. I'll fix it," but I could see it in her face. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't scared. She was used to damage control. That night, I slept in my car, engine off, wrapped in an old hoodie that still smelled like my mom's detergent. Rain tapped the windshield, steady and cold. I stared up at the ceiling, wondering how I got here. A 29-year-old man with no home, drained bank accounts, and a girlfriend warm in bed because I'd been too trusting for too long. And for the first time, I truly hated her. Not just for what she did, but for who I let her become in my life. The next morning, I didn't go home. I drove to a diner across town, ordered black coffee I barely touched, and opened my laptop. I knew what I had to do. First, I emailed my landlord, told him I'd be vacating the apartment by the end of the week, and that any further communication about rent should be directed solely to Lila. Then I drafted an official identity theft report for the FTC. I attached the loan documents, screenshots from her email, messages between her and her brother. I even sent a copy to a lawyer a coworker recommended. I spent hours closing every joint account we had. Bank, streaming services, even that dumb grocery delivery app she loved. I removed myself from every bill, transferred my car title to a trust, froze my credit with every bureau. Lila texted me around noon. "Where are you? Did you take my debit card by accident?" I didn't answer. By sundown, I was back at the apartment. She was sitting on the couch, half-dressed, confused, and annoyed. "Seriously, where the hell have you been?" "I'm leaving," I said calmly. "The lease, the utilities, the debt, you can have it all," she laughed. "What are you talking about? You're not serious." "I'm done," I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I simply packed a suitcase and walked out. She followed me to the door, demanding answers, accusing me of being dramatic, of abandoning her in her time of need. "You abandoned me months ago," I said. "You just kept using my name to stay warm." I shut the door behind me and never looked back. No final scream. No revenge speech, just silence. The kind that says, "You will feel this one day, and I won't be there to care." I moved into a small studio apartment on the edge of town. Bare walls, thin mattress, one lamp, no noise. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout straight from the box, surrounded by unpacked bags, and realized how light I felt. Not happy, just unburdened. The next few weeks were a blur of cleanup. Calls with banks, fraud departments, and credit bureaus became my morning routine. I spent hours on hold explaining the same story over and over. "No, that's not my loan. No, I didn't authorize that transaction. Yes, I have evidence." Each conversation felt like reliving the betrayal, but every cleared balance was a small victory. One piece of my life wrestled back from her chaos. I picked up extra shifts at work, and for the first time, I started saving again. Not for a shared future or someone else's dream, just for me. Every dollar had weight again. Every quiet night felt like healing. There were moments I missed her. The laughter, the late-night talks, the way she used to hold me when things felt uncertain. But then, I'd remember her face when I handed her that eviction notice. The blankness, the lack of remorse, and the ache would fade. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell mutual friends. I didn't want pity. I wanted peace. By month 4, my credit score had begun to climb again. Slow, steady progress. I framed the first letter confirming one fraudulent loan was cleared. A small, symbolic trophy. That was the moment I realized the revenge I'd imagined. Her suffering, her regret, wasn't what I needed. What I needed was this. Quiet stability. The kind she could never afford to give me. And for the first time in years, I slept without checking my phone or bank balance. About a year later, the world caught up with her. I was scrolling through social media when a mutual friend sent me a private message. "You heard about Lila?" I hadn't. Apparently, she'd been evicted from her apartment. The bank had repossessed her brother's car, and multiple creditors had filed collection lawsuits. Her attempts to rebuild her own credit had failed spectacularly, leaving her scrambling in the same chaos she had once wrapped around me. A few weeks later, I got a brief, desperate email from her, filled with tears and excuses begging for forgiveness. She claimed she'd changed, that she was trying to make things right. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The courts, the banks, the repossessions, they were her punishment. She had built a world of lies and theft, and now she was living in it. It was poetic, in a quiet, almost imperceptible way. No fireworks, no dramatic confrontation, just natural consequences. The same way she had let herself drown in my financial life, she was now submerged in her own. When I thought back, I realized the cruelest truth. She had never truly lost me. She had lost herself, and I had gained everything I really needed: my safety, my credit, my peace, and the clarity that no one gets to use me as a stepping stone. It wasn't revenge I'd handed her. It was freedom, and for the first time I felt completely untouchable. I didn't even want to look back. The past, with its betrayal and lies, was over. My life was finally mine. Except for one thing: the quiet satisfaction of watching someone's own choices finally catch up with them. Sitting in my new apartment, a cup of coffee steaming in my hands, I finally let myself reflect. I thought about everything that had happened: the loans, the lies, the late nights in my car, the sleepless anxiety over what she had done with my name. The rage I'd felt was real, the betrayal palpable, but somewhere beneath it all I found a strange sense of clarity. I realized forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. Forgiveness can simply mean freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. And that was exactly what I had done. I'd removed her from my finances, my space, my heart, and most importantly, my life. I started helping friends and coworkers spot financial red flags, sharing tips on identity theft, and telling them, without mentioning her directly, how easy it is to trust blindly. People nodded, grateful, and I felt a quiet pride. It was a way to turn my pain into something constructive. Occasionally, I caught myself thinking about her, but only briefly, and then I remembered. She had stolen my trust, tried to steal my identity, and tried to manipulate my life. But she hadn't stolen me. She had only trapped herself. I smiled to myself, sipping the coffee, knowing the irony was complete. She had built a life of deceit around my name, and yet, in the end, it was her own lies that sank her. I whispered to no one. She stole my name, but I reclaimed my life. That was the real victory. Not the lawsuits, not the repossessions, not even the bank letters confirming cleared debt. It was the quiet empowerment of knowing I could survive betrayal, rebuild from rock bottom, and walk away stronger than ever. And as I looked out the window at the sunrise, I finally felt it. Freedom, untouchable, mine, and absolute. The story ended not with a scream, but with a breath. A deep, steady, victorious breath.